What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel and another episode of The Curious Cat. I'm going to be speaking a little bit about Bitcoin today, my favorite topic, and I know many of you like it as well. There are many haters, but I know there's many fans out there as well. So I love to speak about Bitcoin. It gets me really fired up, and I'm really excited about the price action we've been having, and the charts looking really bullish, and all the news that's coming out is bullish for Bitcoin. And I think it's going to heat up in the next year here. I think we're going to see another major bull run, another major leg up in Bitcoin, and there's many reasons for that I'll get into in this video. With that being said, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with friends and family. It helps me get this info out there. And with that being said, let's get into it. So we had some pretty big news just this last day. We had Warren Buffett sell a lot of his bank shares. I believe he sold all of his JP Morgan stock, and he went into gold miners. So he bought Barrick, one of the largest gold miners around. And that just shows that even the really rich money, the big money, is starting to get out of dollars and starting to bet against the US dollar with all of this money printing that the governments are doing and the devaluation of the dollars that's happening. So everyone is looking to get out of these dollars before they lose too much of their buying power, and they're looking to get into hard assets like gold, like silver, and eventually when people realize what Bitcoin is, I believe they'll start buying Bitcoin as well. Those of us that are already in this space, we are the early adopters. So I think we are some of the first ones to get into the space. And even though it's been around 11 years already, I still think we are the early adopters. We're the ones taking the most risk, and we're the ones that are essentially leading the pack. And so it has to start somewhere, right? So luckily there's some of us that are brave enough to do that, to risk our own capital and wealth to put it into something like this. Bitcoin is revolutionary. That's why I love it. And I think that it is our ticket to potential liberation and to regain control of our money supply, which offers us all kinds of opportunity as people when we can actually work and make capital and put it into a money that isn't constantly being devalued. That's a way that we can all become more prosperous. And when we take the power out of the control of these governments, it returns the power to us. So that's why I'm a huge fan of Bitcoin. I think there's very few that really truly understand it. A lot of people heard about it for the first time in 2017. I first heard about Bitcoin in 2009, Max Kaiser's show, and I've been following it and reading about it ever since. So I've been in the space for a long time, where a lot of people are new and they don't really truly understand what Bitcoin is and why it has so much value and where the potential is. So in this video, I'm going to get into that a little bit. So I think one of the things I love about Bitcoin is how it's decentralized. It's fantastic technology where they have no way of stopping it. So the governments would love to put a stop to Bitcoin because it threatens their traditional banking system, which has managed to enslave so many of us, because they force us to pay high taxes. And they're don't get me wrong, I have nothing against paying into social programs and having, communal money that is able to afford us stuff like healthcare and that. But when the governments aren't showing their books, when they're not being transparent, and we're having all kinds of scandals where these elite families are essentially taxing us and then backdooring the wealth secretly through awarding their friends and family contracts that are they're paying them way more than it's worth, and it's not an open and honest system. And so essentially they're stealing our wealth. So that we need to put an end to that, and that's why Bitcoin offers some great solutions to that, because it's fully auditable, it's time stamped, it's a public ledger. There's no way to cheat it, there's no way to lie and to essentially counterfeit the money like they're doing with these government currencies. So these guys, they don't work for the currency, they essentially just print it out of thin air, where the average person like you and I, we have to give our time and all our energy blood, sweat, and tears to earn the currency, and all they do is print it, and they come in and buy all the assets. So it's not a level playing field. It never has been. And many people have tried to level the playing field by returning to a gold standard. And there's always been a central point of attack. So when other governments have threatened to demand gold for their assets, like their oil, like Gaddafi did, the US was able to come in and attack them because they had a central point of attack. So that is the beautiful thing about Bitcoin, is it's decentralized. So there's no central point of attack. The nodes that run and maintain the Bitcoin network are scattered across the globe, and you would have to take out every single one of them in order to take down Bitcoin. So it's just not going to happen. And there's also nodes that run offline, and there's also ways that people can actually maintain it on a old school ledger where it's in paper format or on like an Excel spreadsheet. That's how it started. So there are other ways that it's backed up, and it's going to be really hard to take down the Bitcoin network. So that is a beautiful property of Bitcoin and how it is going to be so resilient moving forward. And if you think Bitcoin's a scam, let me ask you this. Why do you think every single major government in the world right now is trying to develop their own digital currency? If Bitcoin's such a bad idea and it's a big Ponzi scheme scam like they're trying to tell you in the mainstream media, then why are they all scrambling to try and make their own version of it? Answer that. So they're trying to catch up to the Bitcoin technology that's already been around for 11 years, and it was started kind of from the ground up and adopted by a really small group of people in the beginning, and it grew and it grew and it grew. And so it's a very ground up movement, and it was first adopted by a lot of the kind of libertarians and anarcho-capitalists who believe in freedom and liberation, and people who understand how they're using government currencies to enslave us. So the people that were already aware of that and were already privy to that info were kind of some of the first adopters, because they know what's going on with the money supply, and they know that we need to have a different system. And when Bitcoin came along, it just made a lot of sense for the people that understood how they were using these fiat currencies to enslave us. So that's kind of how I caught onto it. I was studying finance, and I was studying money creation, where it came from, how they put it into circulation, and how they're able to get away with this kind of stuff. And the more I learned about money, the more corruption I saw that was happening, and I saw how they're using it to enslave us and disempower us and steal our wealth. So initially I was buying into gold and silver. I started buying gold back in 2002, when very few people my age were buying gold. And so I became a bit of a precious metals fan way back then and started buying. And when Bitcoin came along, it had a lot of the similar properties to gold, and it also has some properties that go above and beyond gold, in my opinion. There's actually a lot of stuff I like even more about Bitcoin, like the way it's highly divisible, the way that it's really portable, it can't tarnish, it's easier to secure in some regards. Your gold is physical, and if you have it on your possession, it's really easy to steal, and they can get away with it, and that's it. But if you have Bitcoin stored on your cold storage and they get it, they still need a password to get into there and whatnot. So it's got that extra level of security. It's easy to transact with. You can send it anywhere in the world without anyone's permission at any time. You can't do that with gold. Very hard to send gold across the globe. You need all kinds of insurance, and that it just doesn't make sense to be purchasing stuff with gold and sending it overseas for transactions far away. However, Bitcoin, we can do that very quickly and easily without anyone's permission. And I like its portability, how we can have billions of dollars stored on a tiny little USB drive. That is pretty amazing. And how you can easily move around with it. So if I had a lot of wealth and I wanted to move around in these uncertain times. Maybe I want to go traveling. I want to go check out some other communities. I want to flee the country. I want to go to another country. It's very hard to do if you have all kinds of wealth in gold and silver, because it takes up a lot of space, and you're at the risk of thugs robbing you, finding it and robbing you and whatnot. So what you really have to do if you have precious metals is pay for storage. So there's that extra cost of paying somebody to store the metals and keep them secure. And with Bitcoin, like I said, you can actually store it just by having your 12 or 24 words written down on a piece of paper or engraved in some metal or something, and you can hide that, or you can have it on a little USB stick, and then you can hide that somewhere, or you can store it in a safety deposit box. It doesn't take up much room, and it's very easy to hide and to move around with, where gold and silver don't offer that. So I think as more and more people look for alternatives and they look to flee these dollars as they continue to devalue them, people are going to start warming up to the idea of Bitcoin. We're seeing more and more big money move into the space, yet we still haven't seen the major buying that I see coming from the financial institutions and from the hedge funds. And that we've seen some of the hedge funds starting to buy Bitcoin and crypto. However, I think we're still really early to the game. A lot of people are still pretty fearful of it. A lot of people don't understand the tech and that. So I think we haven't seen the major buying from the financial institutions, from governments, from big hedge funds, and from a lot of the big money. I think that is still coming. And I think that's why there's going to be huge opportunity in Bitcoin. I think the price is going to surge in the next couple of years here. I think we'll see another major leg up. We'll probably see it hit anywhere from 40 to 100K at the next high. And I think if we're looking at that now, that's a nice 4 to 10x, and that's massive opportunity. And Bitcoin to me it's not just about the money. A lot of people are buying just because they want to speculate, they want to make money on it. And I understand that making money is a great thing, but I personally invest because I believe in it, and I think Bitcoin is the revolution. I think all kinds of people want to see a revolution. They want to see a new system emerge, but it's very hard to do if we still are under their enslavement, because we're forced to use their money to have a medium of exchange between us. And by adopting Bitcoin and regaining control of our money system as a people, that is our ticket. That is the door to our liberation and to regaining control. So I think Bitcoin is the revolution. That's why I think everyone should own it. And I'm not an advocate of going and putting huge bets and putting all your money in it. If that's what you want to do, that's your choice. I wouldn't recommend doing that. I've probably bet too much of my own money on it, and I have lost a lot of money in the past. So it's up to you, but I think everyone should own a little bit, even if it's just $100 or $1,000 or 1% of your wealth, 2% of your wealth, or maybe you want to have 50% of your wealth. Or I know people that are 100% in and they just keep a little bit of operating cash in fiat. So there's all kinds of different ways to invest, and people that have different risk tolerance and different levels of belief in the technology. So the interesting part is everyone I know that kind of went all in and took huge risk in the last 5 years or so, they're all multi-millionaires now, and they're all very happy with their decision to do so. But they took the risk. They were willing to take that chance. Bitcoin could have crashed and went way down, and they could have lost all kinds of wealth. So some may say it's easy money and they made easy money, but I've been in the space. I know what it's like. It is huge risk to do something like that. So they are entitled to those gains because they were willing to take that level of risk, and they actually took action and did that. So they were handsomely rewarded for that. So in my opinion, everyone should own Bitcoin. I think the big next leg up is coming as more and more people start to flee these phony dollars, and they realize that it's a big scam and that the governments are able to counterfeit money whenever they want. that they don't actually have to produce anything of value to get that money like you and I do. All they have to do is print it, put it into circulation, and they can come buy, snatch up all of our assets that you and I have to work for, and where they get us over leveraged on debt so that essentially we can't afford to maintain the payments, and then they come in with the phony money and they buy it up. So as they devalue these currencies, more and more people are going to look for alternatives. More and more people are going to turn to Bitcoin. And like I say, I think Bitcoin is the revolution. And it's quite obvious that why else would all of these major governments be scrambling to create their own digital currencies if Bitcoin was a bad idea? You just have to ask yourself that question. And right there, that gives you some pretty good answers. And we know what'll happen if we get these digital currencies from the governments. They're going to be centralized. They're going to be unlimited in supply. They're going to be able to devalue them. They're going to be able to control the value of them. And basically what they want them for is to be able to track every single one of your transactions so that they can tax every last penny out of you. They want to be taxing you when you give your kid their allowance. They want to say, oh, that was a transaction, we want our 30%. And you give your kid $5 to go to the store and buy some candy, taxed. They want to tax every single one of your transactions. You have a bet with a buddy on a sports game, bam, taxed. They're going to know about every single one of these transactions. And this is why it's really important for us as people to make sure that we get control of this new technology and we don't let it get into the hands of the government. And it's really up to us if we're going to embrace this and we're going to decide to start using this amongst ourselves. And to when you learn about the technology, there are other cryptos that basically allow us to transact in private, like Monero and Dash, and there's a handful of other ones, Zcash, and that kind of stuff. So, and they're also working on layers for the Bitcoin network that will offer a level of privacy where they can't essentially track it. So we'll see if all that comes to light on the Bitcoin network. They're also looking to have another transactional layer where it's the Lightning network, where they'll have side chains where they can do micro transactions. So for your tiny little purchases, buying your coffee or whatever, essentially all of that will be kept on a side chain, and then it will send the sum of the day to the Bitcoin network. So there is a lot of development that's still taking place. The technology is only 11 years old and we've seen it come so far, and I think it's going to continue to develop and get better. And the governments, like I say, are so far behind. They're scrambling to catch up to the Bitcoin technology. And why would we want to embrace their digital currencies? We already have seen what they do when they have control of the money supply. We know their intentions are not good. And when we have this technology right in front of us that we can all own as people, we can own a part of the network and essentially get control of that ourselves. Why wouldn't we embrace something like that instead of handing it over to the governments where we know they're just going to use it to enslave us and to rob our wealth again? So that's why I'm a huge fan of Bitcoin. Like I said, I think Bitcoin is the revolution. There's all kinds of aspects that need to take place for a major revolution to happen, but Bitcoin is the ticket to that revolution. When we regain control of our money system, we get the power back and we're able to create financial wealth and abundance for ourselves, and we're able to grow capital and store it. And that essentially gives us more economic power to make the changes that we want to see. But when we're constantly being robbed and drained of our capital, it's very hard to essentially have that resilience and that economic power. But when we regain control of our money system, we create a hard money, and we have a whole group of people that believe in these liberating technologies and believe in decentralization, where it's not controlled and manipulated by one centralized power. That's how we get control and we regain it, and we get the power back into our hands. So that's why I absolutely love Bitcoin. I think it's fantastic technology, and I think we're going to see the price soar, and we're going to see more and more people waking up to it and realizing it's not a scam, realizing that it is a tool that offers us liberation. And I'm a fan of not going all in. I also have a lot of my wealth stored in gold and silver as a backup, because if there was ever a problem with the network or some kind of major power outage or internet outage, I still want to have the capacity to be able to transact. And that's why I like to have physical bullion that I can trade and barter with. But all in all, I think unless we have something major happen, I think Bitcoin is kind of the future, and we could see better technologies come along and replace Bitcoin. But right now, Bitcoin is number one. It has 60% of the market share, and essentially I like to keep an eye on that, and I want to watch for these other cryptos that are emerging and could potentially offer better tech. But if you're new to the space, just start with number one. Like, it's like a blue chip stock essentially. Bitcoin's been around the longest. It's got the most secure network. It's got the most capital in it. So why gamble with these smaller cap technologies that are way riskier? Bitcoin might be enough risk as is for your average person. So I think if you're looking to get into the space and you're new to it, don't try and take huge gambles by buying some of these smaller altcoins and thinking that you're going to make huge gains. Don't get greedy. Just stick with number one, stick with the one that's been around the longest. Start there, learn how to buy it, how to transact with it, how to save it, how to store it safely, all that stuff. And when you get comfortable with that, yeah, maybe start branching out a little bit and taking a little more risk and potentially exploring buying some of these other digital assets. But until then, just start with number one. I think that's the only thing I could recommend, or what I like to do. I've watched a lot of these people pushing these altcoins and saying they were the next Bitcoin and they were going to go to the moon and you were going to make 20x 40x your money, and people just putting all their money in these altcoins. And then I watched them go down and down and down, and Bitcoin went up and up and up. And now a lot of these people lost all their capital. They have a bad taste in their mouth, and now they don't want to even touch digital currencies, where I essentially saw that coming. I was in a lot of these alt currencies, and then the more I studied, the more I realized that a lot of them were just people trying to get some of your Bitcoin, and it was all hype. And really, when it comes down to it, we all need to start somewhere. If we're all scattered throughout thousands of cryptocurrencies, it weakens the space. But if we can all embrace one and start using that to start with, that strengthens us. As more and more capital can come together, we can have more economic pull per se, and we can essentially attract more people into the space. And as more people come in and more capital floods in, we essentially create more wealth for all of us and more economic power. And I think it will force more and more governments to embrace these technologies, and essentially it will get to the point where it'll be so big there's no way to squash it, and will basically force the play on the governments where they'll have to embrace it. And I believe at some point in the near future, the banks and the major hedge funds and the governments will all start buying fractions of Bitcoin to essentially hedge against the potential of major collapse in these government currencies. So as they inflate them away, we have more and more risk of complete collapse of the currencies. And when that happens, there's only so many alternatives like gold, silver, and now we have Bitcoin. So there's only so many places to run. So I think more and more people will essentially wake up to that and will be forced. I don't even think they'll have a choice at some point. They'll be forced to start buying Bitcoin, and that will push the price higher. And all of us that were the early adopters and who took the risk are going to be handsomely rewarded. So that's some of the reasons why I like Bitcoin, why I think it's going higher. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. There's so much more I could say on it, but that's just my morning walk and rant. So I hope you guys like that. Please subscribe, like the video, share it, As always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time. I hope you guys found value in that video. We'll see you in the next one.